I don't know if you've been paying attention to this news about Ukraine, but Trump has done a pretty stunning U-turn on Ukraine since where he was at last February when he yelled at Zelensky in the Oval Office, which was a disgraceful meeting. But he has done a total U-turn, and the thing about him is you never know where he's going to land because he changes his mind from day to day. And I've learned that it seems, at least in my experience watching him, that if he carries the same attitude for some period of time or holds the same position on something for some period of time, it means he might mean it. Like you can start, the longer he holds a position, the more you can start to take it to the bank that he actually means it. And one thing I've noticed he's always stood strong on, and something he's been talking about for a very long time, is that he hates the killing in Ukraine, whether it's the Russian soldiers or the Ukrainians. He doesn't like all these people dying. And he said that consistently for several years now. So I kind of take him for his word on that now. He had the February 28th meeting with Zelensky in the White House where he pummeled Zelensky like just terribly. And MAGA was all defending that. They were saying, that's great. Zelensky's a dictator. Zelensky started the war. All these lies were coming out about Zelensky from MAGA, from the base. And over time, we've seen him go through a real change, I think. When he had the meeting with Putin in August, I think that was a low point for everybody. We were like, oh, no, here we go again. But I remember I didn't say anything about that publicly because I was thinking, you never know where he's going to end up. Just because he meets with Putin doesn't mean he's going to end up as Putin's best friend next week. And sure enough, it was a week after that that things started to turn around. I just wanted to show you a bit of a timeline. And the amazing thing, though, is Ukraine has been pummeling Russia in recent weeks since August with drone attacks on their oil infrastructure and their refineries and some of their military infrastructure. And Russia is now hurting bad economically. I think Zelensky said the best sanctions are dropped with a bomb or something like that. But yeah, the best sanctions come with bombs because those are, you know, can't be undone quickly. So they've been doing a great job at that. And I was stunned a few days ago to open the news and find out that this administration has actually been helping Ukraine do that with intelligence and with all kinds of information. Whereas a few months ago, they withheld information. They said, no more information for you guys. And now they've done a complete 180. Very happy to hear that. That's good news for all of us who love freedom and democracy and, you know, have a good sense of right from wrong. And we know it's wrong for a country like Russia to just invade and attack a country like Ukraine and just kill its civilians by the thousands for no reason, certainly no military purpose at all. Anyway, let's take a quick look at kind of the timeline. The Washington Post had this from a couple of months ago that gives a good recap. February 18th, Trump claims Ukraine was to blame. Remember that? Ukraine was to blame. All of MAGA jumped on board. They're like, yeah, that's right. Ukraine's to blame. Zelensky's a dictator and an idiot. And he won't hold elections. And just all the stuff that was so untrue. All of it was untrue. Trump angers Ukrainians by falsely claiming that Zelensky was to blame for the Russian invasion and called him a dictator without elections. Amazing, right? I'm not going to go through all the true facts about all these claims, or we'd be here like for months because there's so many false claims coming out of this group. But February 28th, that was okay. Wait, sorry. Okay, that was the 18th when he made that claim. 10 days later, he meets with Zelensky in the Oval Office. That was the meeting that went haywire, went really bad for Zelensky. 2 days later, on March 30th, Trump said he's angry at Putin. So, see, now you're starting to see you can't take what he says one day at a time and come to any conclusions about it. You have to take what he says each day and then a few months later piece it together and see if there's a trend. And if there's a trend in one direction or the other, then you know he's going in that direction. But back, in February and March, it was like, which way is he going? One day he likes Putin, one day he likes Zelensky. So on March 30th, Trump said he's angry at Putin. He said, what did he say here? Angry at Putin for questioning Zelensky's legitimacy. Wait, Trump said he was angry at Putin for questioning Zelensky's legitimacy. And back 10 days earlier, Trump blasted him and said he was an unelected dictator. Doesn't make a lot of sense. Anyway, he said Trump said he would consider tariffs on Russian oil if he and the Russian president are unable to end the bloodshed in Ukraine, and if I think it was Russia's fault. So first he says it's Russia's fault, then I mean Ukraine's fault, and then he says, Zelensky's an unelected dictator, and then he's blasting Putin for questioning Zelensky's legitimacy. See, you never know. Like, you can't come to any conclusions. All this jumping up and down every single day, every time he opens his mouth, is kind of wasted time in a lot of cases because you don't know. What does he mean by it? And will he believe this tomorrow? You got to give him several weeks to find out which direction he's really going in. That's why I've kind of stayed quiet about this for a long time. I didn't know whether to blast him or not. I wanted to on a lot of these things, but and on a lot of them, he's turned around. He's done a 180 from where he was and what I would have blasted him on. All right, look at this. April 24th, Trump tells Putin to stop the attack. So now we're getting a bit of a trend. It's going for a month now, from March 30th to April 24th, almost a month. And he said, I'm not happy with Russian strikes on Kiev. And he said, not necessary and very bad timing. Vladimir, stop. All right. I know everybody's calling it Kiev now. I grew up with Kiev. I think Kiev sounds cool, so I kind of prefer to call it that. Sorry if that bothers you. I hope it doesn't. Okay, April 26th, Trump meets Zelensky at the Vatican. And to me, this was where things really started to turn around. Remember that meeting he held at the Vatican? And there was a picture. I'll try to find it and put it up on the screen if I can. But of Zelensky sitting in a chair, Trump sitting in a chair, and they were like, doing a powwow together. I thought, whoa, I think that was a real turning point for Trump. I think Zelensky, pulled it out. Like he figured out what went wrong in that February meeting and he just undid all of that and got Trump back on his side. Trump, meanwhile, criticized Putin and Russian attacks on Ukraine on social media, saying the attacks made him think that maybe Putin doesn't want to stop the war. He's just tapping me along and has to be dealt with differently through banking or secondary sanctions. He added, again, too many people are dying. This is a long running theme with him, which is good. But he just now found out maybe Putin's just, stringing him along. He didn't know. Even me, like I've never worked in politics, I've never held office, but I could tell you he's stringing you along. He's going to string you along as long as he can. You know, I don't know if we should give him credit for finally figuring this out or just be mad that it took so long. He did say one thing in that Zelensky meeting that I remember. He said he was asked, "Well, what if Putin uses, they both sign a ceasefire. What if Putin breaks a ceasefire?" And he goes, "Well, wait, what anything could happen. A bomb could drop on your head tomorrow. So what if? What if?" And he said, "But look, if you want me to negotiate with these guys, I can't very well sit here and publicly call Putin names and insult him, and then call him up on the phone and say, 'Hey, Vlad, I didn't mean any of that. Now let's get back to the negotiating table.'" Although he didn't have that same problem with Zelensky at the time. But his point, I think in his mind, he's thinking, I can't say bad, nasty things about Putin in public because I need to call him behind the scenes and get him to talk to me and work with me. And if I'm attacking him, maybe he wanted to work with me. Anyway, obviously he doesn't understand the power politics of all that. He doesn't understand you have to show strength. But maybe he's coming around to starting to understand it. I hope. Look, the thing is, he could have uh, he literally could have ended this war probably shortly after he took office if he had done all the things Biden wouldn't do. If he had released the Ukrainians to really fight the war and given them what they really needed and strengthened the sanctions and scared Russia out of their minds, they would have been at the at the negotiating table so fast. I would say within weeks, if he had shown that kind of strength and been consistent with it for a few weeks, then they'd be like, oh my gosh, we've been totally cut off. We thought Trump was going to be our savior, and now he's killing us worse than Biden was. So that was a real lost opportunity. He could have really shown strength, but he didn't, not at all. April 30th, US and Ukraine signed that minerals deal, which will come to absolutely nothing. I did a video on this back then in May. Um, they will never get these minerals out of the ground. And if they do, there's no market for them. China's already got the market fully supplied, like more than the world could ever use in these minerals in like 100 years. It would take Ukraine, I don't know, I forget what I came up with back when I did the video, but it was something like 100 years to sell all the supply in the world that China has already dug up and all the supplies that exist, here and there from other countries. If Ukraine added what they have to it, it would take 100 years to sell all of it. So, in other words, we're never going to see any money from that. But if Trump thinks we are, and that's a deal, and Ukraine, literally gives up nothing, then hey, that's a good deal, right? Then on May 19th, there was the Trump Putin call where Trump appeared to accept Russia's demand to postpone a ceasefire. It was a bad day. May 25th, though, Trump calls Putin crazy. And he said, I'm not happy with what Putin is doing. He's killing a lot of people. I don't know what the hell happened to him. I've known him a long time. Well, he didn't know him very well because those of us who didn't know him knew exactly what he was going to do, and he did exactly what we knew he would do. Then he said missiles and drones are being shot into cities in Ukraine for no reason whatsoever. Yeah, I mean, that's how it's been since the start of the war. Now he's figuring it out. There's no reason. I've always said that he wants all of Ukraine, not just a piece of it. And maybe that's proving to be right. But if he does, it will lead to the downfall of Russia. Okay, so now it's starting to sound like he's getting a little more sensible about this. June 25th, Trump and Zelensky have a nice meeting. Trump describes the meeting as very nice, saying of Zelensky, couldn't have been nicer. I think he'd like to see an end to this. And he adds that he is going to speak to Putin and see if we can get it ended. So now Zelensky and Trump's relationship seems to be repaired. Okay, July 8th, Trump steps up criticism of Putin. Now, you see, we're seeing a trend now where he's more consistently criticizing Putin and being a little stronger with him on this stuff. He steps up criticism of Putin, reiterates plans to send more weapons to Ukraine. This was back on July 8th, the beginning of July. Uh, but this was days after the White House said the Pentagon had halted deliveries of some key weapons. Remember that? The Pentagon announced they had halted deliveries of weapons, and Trump was asked about it at a press conference or an Oval Office press briefing, and he said, "I don't know anything about it. What are you talking about?" He didn't know about it. Well, apparently, when he found out about it, he wasn't happy. So he said, "I'm not happy with Putin. I can tell you that much right now because he's killing a lot of people." Trump continues, "You want to know the truth? He's very nice all the time, but it turns out to be meaningless." He came to his senses finally. And then on July 13th, he pledged more weapons to Ukraine. And he said he was disappointed with Putin for telling reporters, I thought he was somebody that meant what he said. Well, at least he finally got it. August 8th, he announces a meeting with Putin. And that's where this article left off. But look what's happened since then. Just in the last, this just came out this week. But the US helps Ukraine target Russian energy infrastructure from the Kiev Independent. Look at this. The US has been assisting Ukraine in conducting strikes on Russian energy sites for several months, the Financial Times of London reported on October 12th, citing unnamed Ukrainian and American officials. Ukrainian strikes on Russian oil facilities intensified significantly this summer, disrupting operations and worsening a nationwide fuel shortage. Good news for all the freedom lovers in the world. According to the newspaper, U.S. intelligence has supplied Kiev with targeting data for Russian major oil refineries and infrastructure far beyond the front line. This is great news. And Ukraine has been doing a great job attacking and hitting these facilities. And it has really hobbled Russia. Russia is in bad shape right now. They have lines miles long waiting to get into gas stations. People are running out of gas in their cars as they wait in line to get gas. They're only allowed to get about 5 gallons now. It's ration. The price has nearly doubled, and the people are starting to feel it now. They're finally starting to feel the effects of this war. And it's because we have let Ukraine go and said, yes, go do it right. Be aggressive. Go attack those facilities in Russia that will cripple Russia. And they're doing it. They're doing a great job. Kiev has urged Western partners to tighten sanctions on Russia's energy sector, arguing that cutting Moscow's oil revenues would further undermine its capacity to finance the war against Ukraine. But Ukraine has now disabled something around 40% of Russia's oil capacity or their refining capacity, a huge amount. And sales are down. Russia can barely sell the oil that they export. They are now starting to import oil import refined products like gasoline because they're so low on that. So many of their refineries have been hit. This is really, really good news. One other thing, and this is what Trump should have been thinking about. Look at this paragraph in this article from the Telegraph. It's the first time Washington has been reported to have directly supported airstrikes on energy facilities deep inside Russian territory, a move discouraged by the Biden administration over concerns of escalation. That's if Trump had been thinking about that, if he really thought Biden was weak, why didn't he think, how could I show that I'm strong in juxtaposition to what Biden did? Well, now he's doing it. Now he's doing what Biden should have done a long time ago. Biden could have, the thing that gets me really, Biden could have ended this war before he left office. He was just so tepid. I mean, on the one hand, I really appreciate what he did in standing up against Putin and getting the world together. He really got the world united behind Ukraine. I think he was one of the major movers getting all of Europe and NATO really strongly united behind Ukraine. So I give him credit for that. And I give him credit for the help he did give Ukraine, but he just didn't give enough. And it was always too little, too late. And that's why this war was still going on when we got to this point. So now you may be asking, well, how does MAGA feel about this? How do the president's supporters feel about it? Because they hated Ukraine and they were calling Zelensky a dictator and all that. And they must be really angry with Trump right now, but they're not. Check this out from Axios. Um MAGA's attention is largely locked on domestic turmoil, including the fallout from Charlie Kirk's assassination and a Tuesday shooting at an immigration facility. All right. Still, Trump's new position on the war that Ukraine could reclaim all of its lost territory and even seize Russian land would have been unthinkable at the start of the year. So you'd think MAGA would be upset, right? But no. A shift that once would have set MAGA ablaze instead drew shrugs, reflecting the deference Trump commands even when he redraws the movement's red lines. So when he does a 180, he gets them all on board against supporting Ukraine. The Republicans, the year before he came into office, the year before that, I think 2023 was it? Voted not to send any help to Ukraine for something like 6 or 8 months. Remember that? That really hobbled the war effort. But they did that because Trump said, don't do that. He told them to do that, to vote against sending the aid and the military support. So they did. And all of his supporters, they were cheering that. When he came into office, they were cheering because they were all going to cut everything off from Ukraine and punish them for starting the war and being a country ruled by a dictator. How dare us support a country ruled by a dictator? Unbelievable, really. There's no dictator in Ukraine. But yeah, you know what? They don't care. The Axios says that reflects the deference Trump commands. I will say it reflects how much they have made an idol out of him, how much they idolize him. He's their God. He's literally a god to them. and whatever he does can't be wrong. And they will flip from one thing to the next without even batting an eye. One day Trump hates Ukraine and won't support him. They hate Ukraine, won't support him. Next day Trump's supporting Ukraine. Oh, they're like, oh yeah, let's support Ukraine. It's okay. It's all good. That's the sign. That's how you know you're in a cult. So I would just ask you if you are a Trump supporter, and I appreciate all of you who watch my channel and leave your friendly comments, your supportive and encouraging comments. I always appreciate that. But think about this. If you flip 180 on a dime because your leader flips 180 on a dime, do you ever think to yourself, how is it I could be hostile to Ukraine one day and hate them and not want to support them? And then a few days later, when the president says he's going to support them, I'm like, okay, no problem. How's that possible? It's kind of like what I see happening with Jeffrey Epstein. When it came out a few months ago that Bondi Beach was not going to let any files out about him, uh, everybody, MAGA was pretty upset and angry. But now they're like, all right, whatever, let's move on. Got other things to do, right? Anyway, if that's you, ask yourself, were you angry when you found out she wasn't going to release the files from Jeffrey Epstein? And if you were, and I saw a lot of people online who were, they're like, hey, this is the one thing I can't support. And now they're like, yeah, well, except for it's okay. You know, if that's you, ask yourself, what do I worship most? God, if you consider yourself a Christian, or Trump? Do I stand with truth, or do I go whichever way the wind blows Trump? And if it's that, you really got to ask yourself, how can you flip 180 to 180 just because he does? One side has got to be true and the other has got to be false. So at least half the time you're supporting something that's false and ask yourself, why? Why would you do that for this man? He's not a God. He's not going to lead us to some kind of salvation, national salvation. So stop doing it. Stand with what you know is true and right. Decide that on your own. You don't need him to tell you what's right. All right. All right. That's my 2 cents. And I appreciate you watching. And I'll see you next time. Take care.